I turned the movie into Warner Brothers, and they're like, this is not Sleepless in Seattle. What is this
Yeah,
music?
right, right.
Who are these people with
Yeah.
long hair and leggings and Doc Martens? This we don't want to put out.
Before we get to why you made a Tom Petty doc in the first place and what it was, I want to talk
Yeah,
about Tom Petty in a second. But can you just
yeah,
explain this thing to me? Because you weren't nobody at this point. You had been writing for Rolling Stone for a long time. You were a respected music journalist. You make this movie about Tom Petty. It airs once and in the middle of the night. What happened?
well, it was off of the MTV grid. In fact, it was too close to the subject and his sense of humor and his reckless kind of desire to make something that was out of the ordinary. And because they didn't pay for it, my friend Danny Bramson, that ran Tom Petty's record company at the time, kind of dug into a budget, and we made it on our own and offered it to MTV and other people to show. And MTV did show it once and felt it was possibly filled with illegal footage and maybe just too irreverent. So to me, that's like, that's what a rock doc should be. So unfortunately, it was on a shelf for 40 years.
Hold on. So what didn't they dig about it? Like what didn't they like about it?
It wasn't structured in that kind of a talking head telling you how to feel about stuff. It was a thing that's kind of informed like everything I've done since in a way, because Tom Petty said, let's make it like you're in the band. You're with us. You're not just somebody looking through a prism at us. Be with us. This is our sense of humor. This is how we are on the road. And this is us having fun. And that seems to be the thing that's missing so much in documentaries about artists that you like them having fun.
Were you disappointed that this thing wasn't going to get the big? You obviously spent a lot of time on it, put a lot of thought into it. Were you disappointed that it wasn't going to happen?
A little bit, but I think that he loved it so much, and the people that loved him that kind of saw it later in little chunks on YouTube and over the years, they all kind of said, "Ah, this is why I love Tom Petty." So Adria Petty, Tom's daughter, kind of controls his legacy and his estate now, which is beautiful because she was like an 8-year-old in the kitchen when we were making the documentary, but she has the spirit of her dad. And she said not too long ago, we went to the premiere of a documentary she put together on Wildflowers, Tom's great solo album. And we were sitting around. She said, let's put out Heartbreakers Beach Party. And a lot of people say that kind of stuff and then never do anything. Adria then proceeded to clear all the footage that was slightly illegal, clean up the visuals. And we watched it. And it's just like, man, this lives the way Tom's stuff lives, and he's really present in it. And there's no middleman. This is who he is, and he's telling us that in 1983.
I read your feature on him from 1978 this morning,
Yeah.
the first one you did. So, to talk to me a little bit about the Tom Petty you met in '78, and then the Tom Petty you were showing in '83 in this documentary.
Cool. He was a guy from Gainesville, Florida. When I first heard the first album, I was just starting to kind of write for Rolling Stone. And, a lot of the writers at Rolling Stone would like plant a flag for their favorite new bands. And I heard the first Petty album, and I was like, no, this is my band. I'm going to write about these guys. So I went on the road with him early and found him to be kind of, earnest and a student of rock, and really wanted to lead that band correctly and not fall into a lot of the traps that bands before had. So he was kind of a fan who was also the leader of his band. Listened to all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can hear his Buried Treasure radio show on Tom Petty Radio, and you hear what a great fan of music he is and was. So I just loved kind of growing with the band a little bit, because every album they did a little bit better, and I'd be able to get a little more coverage in the magazine. And there was one, Tom, there was one tour, it was like 78, where you really started to feel, okay, they are reaching for that bigger thing, and they're gonna get there. And there was this moment, you would have really loved it. It was the end of their show. It was kind of like you're gonna get it, period. So like they have I Need to Know and American Girl, um, and all that stuff, but they had like this tight set that built beautifully, and then it was over. And what he played was a version of the Stones song Ruby Tuesday without vocals. And that was the walkout music. And you're just going, whoa, this is some vibey stuff. This guy knows how to put it together. And they really only grew from there. They got their hit album with Damn the Torpedoes and Refugee and stuff. And then right after that, we do Heartbreakers Beach Party.
He obviously
So it's
wants.
kind of like, how's he going to
Yeah.
adapt
Yeah.
to the next phase? Yeah.
He was giving. I tell you that much. Like he was giving in this
Yeah.
documentary. Like this kind of comes up in the outtakes at the end of the documentary. There's the outtakes and a little bit of an
Yeah.
interview with you by Tom's daughter. And he was proud of it. He wanted to sit down. He wanted to talk.
Yeah, and I just was so used to doing interviews in hotel rooms and stuff. I was kind of shy about being on camera. So I'm kind of the nervous guy with, I mean, my nickname making it was Zippy because my head went up, my hair was going up into a point, so I looked like Zippy the Pinhead. So I was like, don't put me on camera. But I am in there a little. Mostly I got a chance to like put you in the room with Tom and ask him how he wrote some of those songs. And there's one piece that kind of snuck out in a couple of Tom Petty documentaries after that they would kind of pull from Heartbreakers Beach Party, where he shows you how he wrote the song The Waiting, which is a great story. And then he talks about how he wrote American Girl, and he's there with his guitar playing it for you. And I just thought, oh, this is like the best profile ever. I get to share these kind of moments with other people who deserve a front row seat like me.
Tom really giving in this documentary, I guess, but he's still very Tom Petty. Like he's not my good friend Lori Brown. She used to be host of Show Much Music, and she interviewed Tom Petty back in like 84, 85. And she was trying to say like he wasn't the easiest guy to draw things out of. He could be a little monotone.
Yeah.
He could be a little guarded. How did you find talking to him? How did you find documenting him? What of him did you want to show?
You know, some people can be guarded out there if they're uncomfortable, or if there's an audience maybe and they want to please the audience and it's just not them playing, but it's them talking. So sometimes it's hard. This was him in his house a lot of the time. And he's, you know, at one point he's just messing around with a box of his own souvenirs, which, you know, unfortunately all got burned in the fire that burned the house down, but he was in his house. So he was comfortable. And up until that time, you'd only kind of known them as this band of renegades. They're on there. They look tough on the album cover. But this was him as really, you know, a family man, just starting to raise that family in his house, in the room where he wrote songs. I love the part where he's going through his box of souvenirs. He asked James Brown for an autograph, and there's a picture. Is the only guy I ever asked for an autograph, the James Brown. And so you really see Tom without a filter, you know. He also knew who he was making it for. Like there was nobody over our shoulders, it was for us. And when he first saw the cut of it, he said a great thing. He said it was a little too traditional, you know. It was like one of the guys that was making it with us had done TV, so he would say things to Tom and me like, you know, you gotta put the question in your answer. And so all that stuff felt a little bit not like what we were doing. So we had a slightly traditional version that we showed Tom one day. And he said, okay, we got to make this more like a joint passed between friends. This is what it's got to be like. And we were like, yes, let's do that. And he said, I'm going to Europe and I want to take some cameras with me. And I'm going to film some stuff. If you can't make it, cool, I'll take care of this. I'll film some stuff with the band in Europe where we're just being ourselves. And one of the things he came up with was in a show in Germany, I guess it is, they finished this sweaty, great show. And Tom set this up as a routine. The promoter leads them into room after room after room, none of them of which are the dressing room. So he's like, where's our dressing room? And they get led into a tennis court, underground tennis court and stuff. And what's funny is it was really funny and we loved it. And one of the women that was working with it on the show was related to Rob Reiner, who was making Spinal Tap at the time. And they saw an early cut of this and put that routine into their film Spinal Tap. So
oh yeah,
here's Tom influencing freaking Spinal Tap at the time, all because he wanted us to make this film fun for people that loved the band and didn't need to be talked down to. And that's the spirit of it. This is his sense of humor. And it really taught me how to be a director. He kind of nudged me into being a director
Really?
at one point while we were filming it. Yeah, I had just written the film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I was really proud of it. And we know that Jeff Spicoli, the character that Sean Penn played, was kind of funny, but the studio hated the movie. They cut all the theaters out of the release at the last minute. So it was bound to be a disaster. Tom had seen it and had a joke with me about how when he was growing up in Gainesville, he had long hair like the surfers in California had. And some people thought that he was just like a stoner that wasn't that smart. So he had this novelty song called "I'm Stupid."
Yeah.
And we were in the back of the RV going to one of his video shoots, and the director of the movie was in a different place, and the director of the video was in a different place. And Tom said, like, "I got a song I want to play for you. You pick up the camera and film it." And I was like, "Well, I'm not the director. I'm a writer. I'm the guy who's doing the profile and interviewing you." He goes, "Get the camera, turn it on. I'm going to sing this song for you." So I did. And I'm looking through the lens and I'm seeing this guy singing right into the camera. And I'm thinking, this is cool. This is like not like writing rock profiles. This is like he's right there singing it to me. And the song is hilarious. And it's called "I'm Stupid." And it's like a minute and a half. It's really funny. I turn off the camera. He goes, "Congratulations, you're a director." And I've been a director ever since. So I kind of go back to Tom Petty and say, thanks for jumping into the deep end with me.
Did you want to get out of music journalism? I've often wondered why, like, what was the shift? Like, at that point, were you already thinking, like, I got to get out of this thing?
I'm still a music journalist. I'm still a contributing editor at Rolling Stone.
But you know what I mean? Like, that being your main gig.
Do.
Yeah, that being your main gig.
My dream, Tom, was to get a story on the cover of Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
So, like, they put a couple of my stories on the cover of Rolling Stone, and I literally was like, that's my dream. What's next? And I always loved movies, and I would always go to movies. I loved Mike Nichols movies and The Graduate. I loved movies that used music and stuff. But I thought, like, there's another kingdom beyond here where they grow directors. But in fact, I kind of vectored into doing that, and they fused in a way, because putting music in movies is still my favorite thing. That stage of making a movie is so thrilling for me. So I love documenting artists I love and telling stories about characters. And so the greatest songs for me are about characters. And
yeah.
So it's all kind of the same thing, but it began really with Tom saying, yeah, you don't need to sit in a room and just write it, do it.
You weren't sad. I guess I'm always interested in, like, what happens when a chapter ends and a new one begins. And maybe that's more something that I think about, or people that are outside of someone's life think about. We tend to think about people's lives in Wikipedia tabs, whereas life is a little bit more complicated than that. But I guess the way I could ask it is, were you ever sad to say, hey, I'm not going to be going on the plane with Deep Purple anymore? I'm not going to be in the van with the Thompson Twins. I'm going to be making my own thing.
Yeah, well, what I was, for sure. Like, there have been times where I've wanted to cover, like, an artist like Gary Clark. Like, what I should be writing about Gary Clark. He's, like, amazing. I have so many things I'd love to ask him, or Billy Strings. And I do go back and write profiles for Rolling Stone sometimes. But I guess what happened is I made up a fake band and told a story about my own life as a journalist, and it became almost famous. So I got to be on the plane, except I was directing the band on the plane, and they didn't exist, but they kind of did. So it's a good question, though, because I do see moments in music history passing sometimes, and I want to be there documenting it too. So, and I do sometimes still.
I know, but I see it as I see the film as a time in music journalism history. Maybe this is just nerdy for me that like, I think at a time when, more and more artists are shutting down any press at all, refusing to do any interviews.
Big time.
Or they're making documentaries for Netflix that they make themselves with their managers running it. And they have, they are making the documentary. I don't know, I'm sure this was accidental because the movie was made in the 80s, but I was also seeing the movie as a time capsule of access of music journalism at that time.
I love that you're saying this because, in fact, there's so many outlets now that you get junkets or Zoom interviews, and you don't get to really hang with the person that much. And I love what you're saying about the self-made documentaries that are like pre-sold to Netflix or something, because what you're getting, and Tom talks about it in our film, they're playing a character, which is also them.
Yeah.
So they're playing the version of themselves that they want to be on Netflix in the documentary of their life. And as Tom says in this one, there's no that guy and me. I mean, who's that guy? Did you leave the room and the other guy came in? No, it's you. This is me. And few people have the courage to do that right now. I mean, I see these documentaries all the time and I'm like, nah, you're aware of the 5 cameras in the room. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you really yelling at your manager with this boom mic over you?
Yeah. Are you really pouring your heart out now and it's shocking you? Or did you kind of, it's the game we play, right?
I want to talk about, so like you said, you continued to make music even within your movies. And I while I got you, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a couple of them. So I wanted to talk just briefly about singles. Just take a listen to this. How great does Layne Staley sound there? It's Alice in Chains with Wood from the soundtrack to the film.
So great.
How good does he sound there, hey?
So good. So good. I mean, they need more respect and legacy appreciation.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of goes Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and then if you're in the know, people talk about Mudhoney and Alice in Chains, but really it's amazing.
Correct. I'm with you. I think they need to get up there.
But I mean, this is interesting for me because I was born in '87. So by the time I got into grunge, it was kind of over. And I thought that Singles was, there was an era of the early 90s in grunge, and Singles was the movie made of that era when all these bands were breaking, Nirvana, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm doing research for this interview with you today. This story is pretty amazing. Would you mind telling it? Like, it was like this movie that seemed to like capture that moment of early 90s grunge was made way before.
Yeah. I started going out with Nancy Wilson of Heart, and we later got married and started a family and stuff. Nancy and Ann Wilson, Heart was kind of a band that had made it from Seattle, and they were kind of considered, like Jimi Hendrix, one of the few to bust out of the Northwest and actually make it on an international level. So I was really happy to like live up there, and I would listen to this station called KCMU, and KCMU would play like down and dirty stuff, which later would be called grunge, Mudhoney, all that stuff, along with blues, along with classical music. And I'd say like this is the greatest kind of music collection ever. You don't get this in LA. And these nasty hard rock bands have a lot of melody in them. Like, listen to this band, Soundgarden. And I just thought this is the greatest pocket of music ever. At the same time, I made a movie called Say Anything, and it did well enough so that they said, well, let's make another movie with this guy. And I wanted to make a romantic comedy where the soundtrack would be this little pocket of music that existed in Seattle where the film takes place. And all of the bands were coming up at the time. The joke was, there's even a joke in the movie that's like, we're big in Germany, we're big in Belgium, Nobody was really into this music outside of some pockets of Europe and the Northwest. Anyway, so I thought, let's put them all in this band, in this movie. Let's give them jobs. You know, Jeff and Stone later from Pearl Jam, then you know from Mother Love Bone, they had jobs on singles. They had music in Say Anything. So it grew from there. Andy Wood, from the singer from Mother Love Bone, died in the process of us getting ready to make singles. They find this kid from San Diego, Eddie Vedder. He joins the band. They start playing. You're going, wow, this band is really great. Nirvana starts to like catch steam. Nirvana originally had music in singles, but what happened was I turned the movie into Warner Brothers, and they're like, "This is not Sleepless in Seattle. What is this
Yeah,
music?
right.
Who are these people with
Yeah.
long hair and leggings and Doc Martens? This we don't want to put out." So right about the time that they put the movie on a shelf, um, Nirvana explodes. Smells Like Teen Spirit is like the biggest thing. And suddenly Warner Brothers comes back and says, okay, we're going to put your movie out and we want to call it Come As You Are,
Okay.
after a Nirvana
Oh,
song.
cool.
And then that became like, no, that's not what we were doing, you know. But MTV said, if you can put together a party where you have the ability for us to promote your movie, and you use this grunge music that's now so popular, we'll put your movie out. So I went around on Lollapalooza and I got like a lot of the people to come and play this promotional party. They did. Eddie got drunk that day, and I'd never even seen him drink. Eddie got drunk, and it was just like a wild melee, and it barely aired. Not unlike Heartbreakers Beach Party, my grand run of like shows on MTV,
unaired legends on MTV.
Yeah, barely shakily reaches number 2, and singles comes out. And here's the thing, you know, some people said, oh, because they don't know how long it takes to make a movie. They're like, oh yeah, that guy went out there last weekend and like put all the grunge together. So over time, I think people understand that it's a snapshot of that time. And the bands gave us great music. The single soundtrack, great. Chris Cornell was originally going to play the lead, and then his commitments to Soundgarden made us lessen it to a cameo. But I have such warmth and like a sentimental feeling for the making of that movie, because all those guys that ended up being legendary, most of them, legendary to this day, were pulling cable and bringing coffee and friends with the actor. So it's an amazing thing, the singles period.
I mean, I think it's really interesting here. You have, gratitude for these actors and gratitude for these musicians who kind of helped you out of this moment. I got to talk to another actor who has a lot of gratitude to you for making her career. I want to play a clip from it. Just take a listen to this.
I couldn't believe that I had an opportunity to be in one of my favorite filmmaker and writers, like personal story. Yeah. Something he knows the most about. I was like, this is a dream. And that movie changed my life. He changed my life in so many ways, from the movie to just the exploration of music that I'd never heard, and immersing myself in music and in a way that felt really honest to me. And it was amazing. And then it totally changed my life.
It's Kate Hudson talking about my guest Cameron Crowe and working on his film Almost Famous. So what goes through your mind when you hear that?
How lucky we were to have Kate Hudson at that time, when she wasn't the original person that was going to play Penny Lane. And sometimes destiny kind of shifts things in your direction, and that she was the perfect person to play that character. She was that person during the making of the movie. The young guy playing the character, William Miller, really did have an enormous crush on Kate Hudson, and they were really kind of sweet to film, acting out scenes that were kind of just like what was happening in life, because we filmed it in continuity. So by the time the movie ends, everybody's super tired and like they're missing each other already. It was a beautiful experience. And Kate was our mother hen. She's that person. Talk about somebody who is the character. Who you see Kate Hudson like on Instagram or whatever, if you follow her life and her social media, that's her. She's a blast to be around, and so was Penny Lane.
For people who don't know, Almost Famous got you a screenwriting Oscar. Of course, it's loosely based on your life when you were 15. You become Rolling Stone's youngest ever contributor, going on the road with bands. We were talking about that earlier. I heard a story, and maybe this is a good Canadian question to ask you. I heard a story that Neil Young was supposed to be in that movie, that Neil Young was cast in the movie. It got to the point where he was going to play like Russell's, the guitarist dad in the fake band's guitar player's dad, who gets carried away with success or something like that. I got a couple of questions here. How did you, like, I've met Neil a couple of times. How did you convince him to be in it in the first place? What happened? Talk to me a little bit about this.
I've never been asked about this. This is fantastic. So thanks for the deep dive. I'd written about him like you. I'd met him a couple times. Our costume designer was one of his good friends, Betsy Hyman. Joel Bernstein, my best friend, is his archivist. So there were many connections to Neil. And he's a director. I'd been on the set of his movie Human Highway and Rust Never Sleeps and stuff. And so I thought it'd be really cool to ask him to act in the movie. And he said yes. And the part was to play Billy Crudup, Russell Hammond's father, the kind of guy that disappears from your life, your whole life, but shows up when you have a hit with a young wife who's flirting with you, his son. So I was like, this is going to be good. And so we fit him for the perfect kind of brown corduroy coat. So there was a moment where he approved his look. And then on the day that we were filming, we get the call in classic Neil Young form. And Neil's not feeling it today.
No,
we're like, well, this is the day, man. This is like the day everybody's lined up to do the scene. It's like, well, he's not gonna play the character, So we're like, oh, we're gonna cut it. But the story ends well because we realized that only a bootleg version of Cortez the Killer, never released, worked in this one scene where Stillwater are walking through an airport hallway after the plane almost crashes. It's like the only piece of music work was this acoustic Cortez the Killer. And we're like, okay, Neil, heartbroken as we are from missing out on your screen debut, we need a bootleg version of Cortez the Killer acoustic. Can you do it? And he was like, not only will I deliver that for you, I will mix it. I will go and find the best version and polish it up and make it work for you. So, Neil giveth and Neil taketh away.
Yeah, you were Stephen
Stills. Any other way.
You were.
That's right. I was grateful for what I got.
You were Stephen Stills sitting at the studio with Crosby and Nash and just going, Neil's gonna come, right? He's gonna make it.
Neil's gonna be here. He said he'd be here. Wait a minute. There's a phone call.
Well, I mean, it's funny that we mentioned Crosby, Stills, and Nash because I mean, like. Maybe this is a good way to start moseying towards the end here is that, I mean, we could go on and talk about movies forever and Jerry Maguire and Vanilla Sky. I'm as excited to talk to you about music because I'm going to be that guy and tell you that I think I've been wondering whether the reason I got into this kind of work is because of Almost Famous. And I'll say probably because I think, and I was like, oh, did it make me want to be a music journalist? But I was like, I was a musician before this. And I think what it made me do is, and I wanted to thank you for
instrument? What was your instrument?
You don't want to hear about it. I played the banjo. So like I played,
Come on.
I played like traditional Newfoundland music where I'm from and like folk music and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I played bluegrass first and all that kind of stuff. Oh Brother happened around the same time. So those two, Almost Famous and Oh Brother, kind of changed everything for me. Because I think what it did was, and I think for a lot of people, is it made it okay to be obsessed with music. It was the first movie I saw that made it okay for music to take over your life, to become obsessive about it and want to know absolutely everything about it. I don't even think I have a question for you, Cameron. I want to
I'm honored. I'm honored that you say this. This is like to me, I'm forever grateful I was able to make that movie. I don't know that I could have made it that way today because I had made Jerry Maguire and that it was a hit movie with Tom Cruise, that you kind of get a credit line of one. And that was how I used up my credit line. Let's go to the actual places where these things happened, where I first met Lester Bangs, the great rock critic, and where, I saw all the great bands at the San Diego Sports Arena. Let's shoot there. And it was an amazing experience to be able to use, and also to get all that music,
Yeah.
which a lot of the bands, I got to say, gave us a break. I mean,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, who'd never given music to anybody, gave us 4 songs. They asked that Stairway to Heaven not be in the movie because Robert Plant was like, okay, come on, that's overused. So, like, don't use Stairway to Heaven. But because we love, he and Page both said this, and it was amazing. Jimmy Page is like sitting there saying, we do love our acoustic side. How about if you use one of our acoustic songs in there somewhere? We'll give it to you for free. We're like, yes, please.
Oh.
Thank you. So the bands all were grateful, I think, that we were going to let the songs play through and not just be somebody opens a car door and you hear a little bit of a whole lot of love or something. It's like they're never going to love that. But we let those songs like Tangerine play. And I've always tried to do that since. Let the music play.
So tell me about this Joni Mitchell. We were talking about this beforehand. So this is a Canadian show. I got to ask you about this. I had heard that you were making a documentary about Joni Mitchell. You're telling me that it's a film.
It's a film, and we've been working on it for about 2.5 years. We haven't talked about it much, but it's starting to come to fruition, and hopefully we'll get it out for a year from now. But there's a very nice, lengthy sequence that takes place in Toronto, where she lived in the mid 60s. And Joni herself, I've always been lucky enough to write about and interview. And, when it came time to kind of make a movie like this, I asked her about it. And she said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do the research and make it all authentic and where things happened. Let's know all the details. Her memory of all the people that she knew who helped her and that she lived with in Toronto and everywhere is people that people that you don't know is incredible. And it's filled with the characters that shaped her life. And that's probably about all I can say right now. But my dream is to bring that movie to Toronto as early as possible.
I can see the laser pointer on your forehead, the sight. They can hear you talking about the movie, and they're going to take you out. Let me go out like this. I really love at the end of the Tom Petty documentary, you ask him a really tough question that I'm often not afraid, but like I never know if it's going to yield a good answer, which is like essentially asking a version of why are you like what is it about your music that makes it so great? Like what is it about your band that seems to hit people? It's always an interesting thing whether artists have perspective on their own work. And Tom Petty kind of does. He kind of says, like, at the end of the day, we're a really great rock and roll band. I want to be a great rock and roll band. Tom's gone now. And it was also sad watching it, looking at it that way. How about you at this point? What's the Tom Petty legacy after going back through it, remaking this movie?
It was about the songs. And he worked really hard on those songs to make them sound effortlessly timeless. And when you talk to people in his family or even to him, as he shows you in the movie, like day after day, he would work on a chord change, which then becomes, the waiting is the hardest part. Okay, I got it. So this was a guy who was a almost an invisible craftsman. You don't feel like somebody sweat and tried to beat their chest and write the greatest song of all time. They just worked. And that's what I get from Tom. And also that he was a fan with the lead seat in his own band. So that's why I love that. I asked one really stupid question early on, which is like, did anybody ever give you advice on your voice? Which I don't know why I asked him that question. He answers it beautifully and doesn't throw it back. And of course, he's got one of the greatest voices ever. He was leaving it low at the time. So that's kind of why I was asking him. His voice turned up in the records later. But I did ask him how he wanted to be remembered. And he did have a great answer. He said, I just want to get old and hear those songs on the radio. Yeah. And you hear him say that, and it's like, brother, they last on the radio. They're built for that, the long run,
Unbelievable. Cameron, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for doing this.
You too, Tom. So fun.